Standing in the thick forests of Hokkaido, Japan's wildest and most open geographical space, stands an old, round schoolhouse. With rumors of ghosts, mysterious lights, and shadow figures lurking in the woods around the old building, and curious thrill seekers vanishing, this site is considered by many to be one of Japan's most haunted buildings. In this episode of Supernatural Japan, we take a look at Japan's Round Schoolhouse and talk to a Canadian vlogger who made his way to rural Bibai, Hokkaido, to investigate it for himself. Supernatural Japan, Episode 2, Hokkaido's Round Schoolhouse. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I'm the host of the Supernatural Japan podcast. I made this show to share my love of all things weird. First of all, a big thank you to everyone who listened to episode 1 about the Shinichi department store fire in Osaka. Also, thanks to everyone who has subscribed to the podcast and followed us on Instagram and joined our Facebook group. Now, it's time for this week's episode. According to JapanGuide.com, Hokkaido is the second largest, northernmost, and least developed of Japan's four main islands. Its weather is harsh in the winter, with lots of snowfall, below zero temperatures, and frozen seas, while in summer, it does not get very hot or humid, as in other parts of Japan. With its unspoiled nature, many national parks, and rural landscapes, Hokkaido attracts many outdoor lovers, including skiers and snowboarders in the colder seasons, and hikers, cyclists, and campers from June till September. Now, let's take a look at the haunted Round Schoolhouse. I want to share some information from a few sources and then on to our interview with Rich, the middle-aged expat, or that's what he's known as on YouTube. Now, from a well-known Haikyo, or urban exploration website, called Abandoned Kansai, the writer and explorer Florian describes the house as a classic urbex location in Japan and probably the most unusual school in the whole country. Now, this comes from the abandonedkansai.com post where Florian explored the schoolhouse. What looks like an old, abandoned, partly demolished industrial complex in the forest is actually a legendary school, famous among urbexers even when I started back in 2009. Built in 1958, partly raised about 20 years later, the school dates back to 1906 and went through several name changes and is said to have been rebuilt in the 1950s from wood to ferro concrete before it closed in 1974, 2 years after a nearby mine, the reason this large school for more than 1,500 students was originally built. There is little known about the wooden building, but the modern one consists of two round structures with almost 30 meters in diameter, 3 floors, 13 meters tall. A few years ago, after the school was closed, the southwestern building was demolished, giving the remaining one even more the looks of an industrial ruins. In the past, the shutters visible on some photos actually opened to a connecting corridor. There weren't loading docks or something like that. Also, little is left of the nearby gymnasium. Almost 50 winters of total neglect left little more than a foundation and some bent iron. What makes the school visually even more interesting is the fact that the lower floor is almost half underwater all the time, making it difficult to enter from spring to late autumn. And the snow from late autumn to early spring makes the whole structure hard to access the rest of the time. Though accessible, because apparently the water freezes solid in the winter. And that is from abandonedkansai.com. And I will actually put a link to this post from Abandoned Kansai in the show notes, as well as on the Supernatural Japan Facebook group and on the Instagram feed. There's some amazing photos he's taken and shared, and he also has a great video showing the flooded schoolhouse. Now, we get to a very different perspective of the haunted Round Schoolhouse from the Mysterious Universe website. And that's mysteriousuniverse.org. Dark rumors and stories sprang up almost immediately after the closing of the school, beginning with locals claiming that the woods in the vicinity were haunted by bobbing, mysterious lights and half-glimpsed shadow figures, and the night often pierced by disembodied screams as well as other less discernible anomalous noises. Additionally, there were rumors of several children who had gone out to play in these woods to never come back. It was not long before these phenomena and rumors were linked to the abandoned former schoolhouse, and things would get spookier still. Through the late 70s and 80s, the Round Schoolhouse became a popular place to go to try to see ghosts, and by all accounts, it was absolutely infested with them. Frightened trespassers to the site would come back with terrifying tales of encountering all manner of supernatural phenomena on the school grounds and within its dilapidated building, and it has steadily become increasingly well known on into later years as an absolute hotspot for the paranormal. Paranormal investigators who have been there consistently put this location on top 10 lists of Japan's most haunted places, and there have been Japanese spirit mediums who have been so overwhelmed with the negative spiritual energy here that they refuse to come back. Japanese videos on YouTube of macabre adventure seekers and the ruins also have become quite popular, whether they show anything paranormal or not, and the legend of the haunted Round Schoolhouse of Bibai has surged. Even above and beyond the talk of hauntings, more sinister rumors tell of people going off to explore the ruins only to disappear without a trace. And stories abound of abandoned cars found on the nearby road, their occupants said to have gone off towards the schoolhouse to never return. Perhaps worse yet are those who have come back completely stark raving insane, driven over the brink of madness by whatever it was they had seen in that forsaken place. Stories of the missing or of people going mad at the Round Schoolhouse are very persistent on Japanese paranormal sites, with comments of witnesses common. Even as they made their way through the forest towards the schoolhouse, they purportedly heard sounds coming from the trees, such as what sounded like someone banging on a tree with a stick, the sounds of someone snapping twigs, and what one of the witnesses swore was a sound of giggling. Things didn't get any more normal when they reached their destination, and disembodied footsteps seemed to echo out all around them. But it was when they reached one particular room where things would really take a truly bizarre twist. Here they came across a faintly glowing opening in the wall, which supposedly shimmered and rippled. The witnesses would say that what happened next, and this is a translation from a Japanese blogger, we stared at this glowing patch upon the wall for several moments, and that was when something seemed to come out of it. It looked like a hunched over figure, but it was impossible to see the face. Then there were others coming out two at a time until they were looming all around us in the dank, confining space. My friend and I looked at each other and ran. He says he looked back and saw, and the glowing was gone, but those shapes, they were everywhere. Okay, now that is from a post over at mysteriousuniverse.org, and there's going to be a link to that post in the Supernatural Japan Facebook group. Now, while researching this haunted site, I jumped onto the YouTube machine to find some videos. And one of the better done videos was by a Canadian vlogger based in Hokkaido at the time, and his YouTube handle is the MiddleAgedExpat. I reached out to him, and he was kind enough to come on the podcast. So, it's time now to listen to someone who's actually taken a trip to one of Japan's most haunted buildings. So, folks out there listening, we've got another episode of the Supernatural Japan podcast, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about Hokkaido's Round Schoolhouse. And I have a guest in this episode to talk about it, someone who's been there, who's got a vlog about it. I've got Rich from the MiddleAgedExpat YouTube channel. Rich, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. Really excited.
Cool. Right. Now, just wondering if you could tell us just a little bit about yourself and where you are at the moment.
Sure. So I'm currently in just south of Guangzhou in China. I've been teaching English here for a while. My most recent trip into Japan ended, I guess, in towards the end of 2019, before the just before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
And I've actually been here ever since. I've been vlogging off and on for untold amount of years at this point, in various different channels. I've been, I was part of the EN blogging revolution before it was called blogs.
Okay.
So I've been around the inner tubes for a while.
Okay, cool. Well, that's, as have I. That's kind of how I got started with the podcasting thing. Originally, I was a YouTuber. I was based in Japan for 10 years. I was one of the first air quotes J vloggers, making videos back in the day before when no one made money, because there was no such thing as monetization. So then I got into podcasting, and it's been great to, with this podcast, get back into Japan related podcasting, although a bit of a different twist than before. So when I was doing some research into different topics for episodes for the Supernatural Japan podcast, I kept coming across all these list pages. So like when you type in like Haunted Japan or Ghost in Japan, this Round Schoolhouse thing kept popping up again and again. And then I came across your vlog on YouTube, and it was an entertaining video, and I reached out to you, and you were kind enough to come and talk to us about it. So I was wondering what brought you to Hokkaido, Japan, and what brought you to searching for a haunted schoolhouse in Japan?
Okay, so what brought me to Japan was actually what ended up being a bit of a failed business venture. A friend of mine and I were trying to start up an Airbnb / driving service catering to Chinese tourists, because they can't get an international driver's permit, so they can't drive anywhere. They're forced to go on tours and whatnot. Excuse me. So that's kind of what brought me there. I've always been kind of crazy about going to Japan, living in Japan. This kind of this opportunity came up, so we jumped at it. We opened up in Hokkaido. Before going to Hokkaido, I was just doing some research as part of a driving service. We're looking at things to entertain guests and what have you. Okay. And I was actually watching. I was inspired by watching Abroad in Japan. And just my favorite channels right there. My son, likewise.
I've got an almost 12-year-old son, and the two of us love watching his videos. And I love the Abroad in Japan podcast too. It's great.
Yeah, it's been very entertaining. That kind of inspired me. So I think it was his trip with Joey the Anime Man. Yeah. And running into one of the caves, one of the haunted caves.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. That's a good one.
And that and going through the forest. Anyway, that kind of like inspired me to kind of look for that, because I was kind of interested. But yeah, again, kind of like you, I'm not knee deep in the supernatural and whatnot, but it's just kind of piqued my interest. And so I just did. Yes, I ran into those top lists just like you did. And I knew I was going to be in Hokkaido, and so I thought, okay, this Round Schoolhouse, I really want to check this out. So, hey, just the architecture itself is just kind of interesting. This Round Schoolhouse. But then, it's haunted, and just hearing about the stories of, people, going nuts, and, the sightings and the sounds, that just kind of piqued my interest. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of really what led me to there. And that's pretty much how I got there.
Okay, cool. So, so you weren't really a big paranormal fan or an aspiring paranormal investigator or anything like that when you decided to take this trip on?
Yeah, I was no Peter Venkman with a proton pack. No.
Nice. Yeah, well, neither am I. But yeah. So yeah, I read a little bit about it. Reports of shadow figures and strange noises, all that kind of stuff. I think you alluded in your video, in your vlog about you wanted to see what all this spooky stuff was all about.
Yeah, exactly. that was pretty much about it.
Okay. So
I think from the sounds of it, I think you and I probably read the same things.
Possibly.
Checking it out.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So you plan this trip, and in your vlog, your YouTube vlog, you kind of documented a little bit about your trip there. So tell us about the trip itself. I think in the video, your wife is with you, and the two of you go there together. So I was wondering if you could just kind of break down a little bit about your trip, and it kind of seemed to end up in a little bit of disappointment too, if I recall.
Yeah, it kind of did. Yeah, it did. So the trip itself, I drove from, I used to live in the city of Otaru. That's where I was staying. So, and I think it was about a 90-minute drive, an hour drive or a 90-minute drive at Japan speeds, which is usually pretty slow. So it was a very quiet trip. There wasn't much. There's a lot of nice scenery, and a lot of flat land to take a look at. So the trip there is quiet, pleasant. There's no real difficulties with it. Once we had got there, we had a hard time trying to find out where we needed to go to try and get in there. I think if I looked at the maps a little better, I think I probably could have found an easier way. But what we ended up doing was just trudging through, some bush to try and get there. There's lot of bugs, a lot of spider webs, but it was a bit of a challenge to get through there. Okay. But it was fun. It was enjoyable. A little bit messy. And then when you start finally seeing the schoolhouse in the distance, you kind of feel that excitement building as you're getting closer. So we traveled through. We got there. And you start seeing the school being surrounded by water. I had no idea at the time. Like it was almost like a moat essentially, being there. So I get there. I get I'm a little bit disappointed because I can't go in. Okay. And I think that was probably the biggest disappointment because I couldn't go in. I couldn't really get that sensation of, what was happening in the school. Why did it shut down? So we were able to walk around, take a look, kind of get a few vantage points. But we weren't really able to go inside. We did find, looked like, I don't know if it was like a gymnasium or a storage facility outside of the school. Couldn't quite figure out what it was, but we were able to walk around there a little bit, but yeah, it definitely didn't have that, the feeling that I was hoping to get. I think the mystery towards why that school was just suddenly shut down, I think may have been coal mine related, either that or just even just maybe the ground itself was not a very good ground to actually lay a school on because there was a lot of water. So it does kind of makes me wonder if there's either water problems or something to do with a coal mine right underneath. But yeah, so getting there, I didn't really get the experience I was hoping for. Don't meet. I think I said in the video, don't meet your heroes. Nice. But yeah, that's kind of how it ended off. Afterwards, we did just a little bit of a tour of some local hills and mountains. Okay. Got some really good views of the local town or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, overall, I'd say the actual schoolhouse, without being able to go in, was a bit of a downer. I think I would like to go back. I would like to bring. I wish I had a drone at the time. Even that would have been kind of at least interesting, so I can kind of get inside. But I would definitely want to go back. I think I was missing something, just not being able to get inside. I think that would have made all the difference in the world.
I think when I was watching your video, I couldn't really quite get the kind of perspective or idea of what you meant by there being water all around it until I did a bit more Googling and I came across a website, Abandoned Kansai. And that's a site I followed all the whole time I lived in Japan. It's a urban explorer, which they call Haikyo in Japan, named Florian. I tried to get him on my Just Japan podcast, my previous podcast, many times, and he always refused. He's apparently very shy. But he went to that spot too, and he got a lot of great pictures. And he apparently was equipped with hip waders because he got inside. And I think when he got in, the water level had been lower, but you could see the water lines on the wall. Like that was a flooded building. And I think I did read on that blog post that building, that structure that is in your video that you did see was, he said gymnasium. So it could have been. But yeah, it was interesting. And those are photos. I'm going to share some links to that in the podcast Facebook page group and stuff like that. But yeah, so overall, so it sounds like it wasn't a bit of disappointment because you weren't prepared. But you mentioned that you would be willing to go back again.
Oh, definitely would love to go back again. I think having been there, I'm pretty sure I found a easier pathway to get there. Okay. So for those of you who may be going to check this out at some point, there is a small creek or river, and if you go in, I think if you go to the side where the school is not, I think you could actually walk up there. I think it looks like there's a little bit more of a driven path, and you can actually walk that and go around and come back instead of trying to trudge through the bush like I did. Save yourself some effort, save yourself some workout, and spider webs. But I think there is an easier way to get there than I went, for sure.
And in Japan, the spider webs well with those big, the orb weaver spiders. They call them Joro spiders, the big colorful ones. So I'm curious, you're in Guangzhou now. Have you sought out any haunted places in Guangzhou, or do you have any vlogging projects potentially in the future?
I haven't really sought out much in the way of hauntings here. I've never even really crossed my mind, to be honest. As far as future projects, absolutely, there is more coming. It might not actually be in China this time.
Okay.
I'm actually hoping to hit up the Philippines during the summer, actually.
Oh, nice.
So maybe a little bit coming from there. I have been doing a little bit with a small segment called Trying Asian Snacks, where I'm just, eating weird Asian things. But yeah, there's definitely things on the horizon. I got a new drone recently that I haven't really gotten good use out of yet. So there's stuff coming.
Nice.
Kind of still gestating, trying to figure out what my angle is and whatnot. But yeah, there's definitely more coming for sure. It is a fun hobby of mine.
Yeah, so folks out there listening, Rich's channel is not a paranormal supernatural channel. This was a specific vlog post that caught my attention, but I did watch some of your other videos and enjoyed them for sure. Yeah, so it's really cool for you taking the time to stop by and chat. I've done a little bit of research into some haunted places here in Shenzhen, and theoretically haunted. There's air quotes. And my son and I went and checked out one place this summer, the Bank of China Towers. It's like an office building, apartment complex. The only thing we could enter was the convenience store on the first floor. I do have a photo of my son standing. I took some photos. I have a photo of my son. This is the middle of the day, standing beside the pop cooler. And it looks like a bottle of pop has fallen over and is pointing at him. And I'm like, that's proof. See, it's pointing at you.
Nice.
But yeah, well, thanks so much. What is the name of your channel again? For those of it,
MiddleAged. Yeah, the name is MiddleAgedExpat. Just because I'm middle-aged and I'm an expat.
Hey, that sounds like good. Sounds like me too. But you got the name first. But yeah, guys, so there's going to be a link to this vlog in particular in the Facebook group and all that stuff. And Rich, thanks for taking the time to stop by and chat with us.
Thanks for welcoming me. I really enjoyed this.
Now, a big thanks to Rich for stopping by the podcast to share his experience with the Round Schoolhouse in Bibai, Hokkaido. You can find a link to his video over at the Supernatural Japan Facebook group, and you can also find photos and more links about the Round Schoolhouse there and over on our Instagram feed, which is at Supernatural Japan. Now, the best photos of the site, in my opinion, are the ones from the abandoned Kansai website, and you can get a really good idea of the flooding that Rich talked about during his interview. And there will be some photos and some more information over, again, on the Supernatural Japan Instagram feed and the Facebook group, and there's going to be a lot of links. Now, I hope you enjoyed episode 2 of the podcast. Thank you for all your support and listens on episode 1, all about the Senichi department store fire and the big camera hauntings. Remember, you can really help out this new podcast by leaving a rating and an amazing review where you listen to it. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor right now, and soon we hope to be on other platforms as well. And if you have any podcast ideas for this, any episode ideas you want to throw them my way, you can do so over on Facebook or Instagram. Now, I'm Kevin O'Shea, and I'll be back really soon with another episode of Supernatural Japan.